Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first ever virtual barbershop talk. I'm your host, Danny Torres. Once again, Plug Talk Sports, hosted by Grumman Barbershop. All right, our special guest today is Serah O'Keefe, former collegiate volleyball player, now a coach, and the co-owner and co-founder of For His Glory podcast. Serah, thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule just to be here and to have this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be on here.
So we're going to get right into it. First question, how did you get started in beach volleyball, just volleyball in general, and what drew you to the sport?
Volleyball was really, so I've said this to people before, volleyball was actually the first sport that I didn't like as a kid. I played every sport growing up. My coordination wasn't synced when I tried it at about 9-10 years old. A few years later, I picked up on it. I remembered what my coaches had taught me, and I don't know, it just clicked. And I went from not liking it to I was in middle school when I played on the high school team. And then once I went to high school here at Monarch High School, where I coach now, I was blessed to play all 4 years on the varsity team. I got to rack up some stacks, and obviously then I had really developed a love for the game, and God has just been using it as a tool since then, really. So it's been about, how old am I? Like 8 years, like about 8 years now. I started playing beach volleyball late my senior year of high school. I was facing some injuries on the hardwood floor, and someone said, hey, you're really good, you're talented, you're athletic. I don't think you would have these same issues in the sand, and I still think you could pursue it as a high level. And that's what I wanted out of the sport. I always wanted to play at the high level, and even now playing professionally, I haven't looked back.
What would you say was the biggest challenge moving from indoor to the sand?
Definitely just running around in the sand. I had to do sand conditioning when I was playing indoor, and I did not like it when I was younger. It's obviously it's less people, so there's more ground to cover. And there are even times now that I'm thinking, in practice or in games and watching film, I'm like, wow, we do what we do in an outdoor environment.
Yeah.
Sand actually does come into play in the sport in terms of not everywhere you play is going to have the same sand. There's such thing as deeper sand and more compact sand. So it affects a lot. It's the equivalent of when of just any outdoor sport. You deal with the conditions, and that's just that.
Yeah, how difficult, I can only imagine, how difficult is it being out there playing in the sand when it starts raining?
So I actually like playing in the rain. We had a little bit of a rained out practice this morning. But the problem is there's not a design that has been made for the ball that doesn't allow it to absorb water. So that's normally why games will get rained out more often than not. You can't just play in it. They might let you finish out a game in a tournament, but that ball can get up to, like 3-4 pounds, and that's not good for your shoulders to be trying to whack at that thing. And so, but I like it. For me, it's like, oh, I put on a visor, I'm keeping cool. But for some people, obviously, a lot of our motions were looking into the sky. So a lot of people do not like the rain in their eyes.
When would you say was the first time that you actually, like, it hit you that you could play professionally? Like, this is a possibility.
I don't know if there was a distinguishing moment. I just knew that since I was a kid, I always really, really wanted to be good at something.
Yeah.
I always worked hard, and I just always was very, very competitive, even down to board games, like family board games. Me and my dad would get into it. I had to win. And for me, I never really was interested in playing for fun. Like, I know that I have friends that will always ask me to go out and play with them at the beach, and I'm glad that it's fun for them. But for me, it's like, I don't want anything that doesn't involve like, like hard competition winning. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to go out there and play and, just rub it in their face that I, but I, I would say that entering high school, I wanted to play Division 1. I knew that from the jump. I told that to my high school coach. I said, hey, this is what I want to do. And even he was taken back because I was like, scrawny, 5'7". He said, you know what it takes to be a D1 athlete. I said, I know what it takes, and I want you to get me there. And God had different plans for me in this sport. Obviously, I started playing beach. And I think truly that because I started playing beach, it was the only way I got into a Division 1 program in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And once I transferred to FIU, I would say that that's when I really started to lock in and take it seriously. I think my freshman year was, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, I wasn't the most focused individual. And that goes with faith, school, and sports. I was kind of floating around socially. But once I transferred to FIU my soccer year, post COVID, I was like, if I want to stay in this sport, I'm going to have to dedicate a lot to it. And yeah, I would say this past year has been a lot of growth in the skills aspect. But college was the growth that I needed character wise to get to the mentality that I have now, and that's pursuing even more out of this sport.
Something that I find so cool in myself working in sports, it's seeing how much it takes for athletes in training, how many hours they put in the gym, practice, and just recovery. Now in the professional scene, like what is your daily routine like?
So I have practice now in off season. I train Tuesday, Thursday, Friday mornings. All of my days start at about 5:30 a.m. is usually when I set the alarm, because I don't like to change the alarms on different days. The weekends are when I get to sleep in. So yeah, training Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I do recovery as needed and physical therapy on Saturdays. But it's usually morning. As soon as I wake up, I use the Through the Bible app. It's actually, so in a time span of 5 years, it'll take you through the entire Bible. It's like a 26 devotional every morning. While I'm listening to that, I brew my coffee. I get my mind right for the day, because I think that's extremely important. I mean, you would go insane in not even just sports. I think that we like routine as humans, and I think like it's just a good thing, whether it's a 9 to 5 job or whatever it is, to just always get your mind right and do the same thing every day, because I think your body and your mind like it. Then after practice and lift, it's usually, cooking, meal prepping, all that good stuff. Recovery takes a lot long. It's a lot more of a nuisance now that I'm older. When I was a freshman in college, I could ignore the athletic trainers and be like, no, I'm fine. But now it's a lot of, you don't want to be tired, because that's how you get injured. And I'm spending like an hour and a half in boots and ice bath and cupping and all that stuff. But like, it's part of the job. And so you do kind of learn to love it, because there are just those moments that I'm like, okay, well, how many people say that they actually, this is work, is that, that I actually need to get recovery because of what I do. It's a very rewarding job at the end of the day, and I'm super blessed for it.
I mean, that's what I tell people all the time. Like sometimes I think to myself, like, man, I have so much work and I'm so tired. But then I start to think, I literally work in sports. Like this is probably the best job ever. But you touched upon the mental aspect. How important is it mentally at your level, the professional level, and how do you prepare mentally? Practice your daily routine, because it can probably take a toll on you, and especially going into games.
For sure. And if my coach is watching this, which he said he wanted to, and I'm being honest right now, like Coach Mike, you can hear me say, mentally, that is the weakest part of my professional career. Like that is the hurdle that we've been trying to overcome right now. because it does take a toll. And my coach is very well read in the psychology department, and it really is just how you approach everything. He touches on a lot, making sure you don't fall into that victim mentality and, oh, this is so hard and what I'm doing, and just really attacking every day. And, even the days where you do wake up and you're not feeling great, you don't need to feel good to play well. And you don't need to feel good to get those gains out of what you're doing. And so, really, what I try to do is just try to keep a constant attitude about everything. Like I said before, this has been the most difficult part. I'm a very naturally emotional person, and emotion in sports will contradict everything you're trying to accomplish, because sports is very instinct based. And the moment that emotions come into play, like I've had, even just since off season started, I feel like I've been on this emotional roller coaster, because it does get hard. But for me, it's learning how to trust the process and being process driven and not being results driven, and take the good with the bad and the bad with the good, and move forward. And I think that's an important way of living, not just in sports but in life, because things are going to happen, but if you're mentally there, also, like, I'm blessed. I don't know how a lot of athletes do what I do without faith, because at least at the very end of the day, when my head hits the pillow, I can say, you know what, God put me in this sport. He can take me out when he wants, but I just get to play. And that's the mentality that I'm really trying to remind myself. I get to play right now. I want to be the best that I can, and that's it. I want to glorify him.
So, for example, football players, or I would say basketball as well, they watch a lot of film to prepare for games. Is that something that you guys do, or how do you analyze opponents preparing for a game?
Yes, I think film is probably an across the board thing for
Yeah.
athletes. It's up there. Everything is important in what we do, and studying opponents, especially in volleyball. So once you get to the international play, different countries have different styles, and you
Yeah.
don't want to go up against them not knowing how they play. Uh, I'm lucky in the sense of there's not that much film out there on me with how my career has been in the past. I haven't played international yet. So we're hoping next year that if I do everything right in this off season, that I can come out kind of a young gun with no information, because it's going to get harder once people can research me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I research the greats, the current greats, the past greats. The sport is constantly evolving. My coach, I actually had a conversation with him, I think it was last week. I said, what exactly should I be looking for? And he actually said, look up the same player and how they were in a game where they won, played perfectly, like crushed them. And then also watch, their demeanor and their style of play when they were losing and they got blown out completely,
Yeah.
because everyone reacts differently. The best
Yeah.
athletes are the ones that can keep that same constant, in any type of situation. It's just what you see is what you get. But yes, for sure, film is a very important thing in going into competition days, because in beach volleyball, even at the top level, I want to say you're going to play about, if you're winning that tournament, maybe like 6 games in a time span of 2 days. Because
That's a lot.
it's double elimination style. If you're
Yeah.
still scrapping to get through, and if you're playing in the qualifier, you're playing, who knows, you can get up to like 10 to 12 in a time span of 3 to 4. So you want to know who you're going to face, especially if you're going to face them multiple times.
Yeah. I think anybody that looks at both of our platforms see that we're very heavy into our faith, and our faith means a lot to us. Just talk to us a little bit about your faith and how that's played an impact in your life personally and with volleyball.
I mean, it's everything to me. It wasn't always, but I can 100% say that my life is better now because of it. People who have been there from the jump, or people who saw me at the beginning and then saw me in more recent years. Whenever, for me, if someone were to ask me, I said, okay, what's your evidence that Jesus is real? I said, well, if you knew who the person I was before, you'd have trouble denying it too. He's changed me inside and out. And within the sport, I mean, I finally have peace, which is not something that I got out of sports and that I feel that a lot of people don't. I mean, identity crisis and purpose crisis are very real things. And, having Jesus on my side and me being able to wake up every morning and say, hey, if I go out today, if I tear an ACL, whatever, my life is going to be just fine. I think that once I realized and really was able to lean back into knowing that, I've been playing better just because now I'm more relaxed. I don't have any concern in the future of, having to open up Twitter or whatever and say, oh my gosh, all these people say, my career is over. So they don't define me. They never did. And my prayer to God every single day is I'd never want to fight him. If it's time for me to leave the sport, just make it loud and clear. I don't want to be in denial. I don't want to be delusional about it. But that said, that has been my prayer in the sport for a few years. My testimony goes back. I was raised in the faith, but that doesn't mean I got it all right. My first few years of college were rocky, kind of walked away. But once he reeled me back in, and I've been praying that prayer for a few years, there have been times that I'm like, it really feels like I should put the ball down. God, this is pretty hard. And it's almost like every time that I got to that point of like, it's time, a door would just swing open. That's how I ended up playing beach volleyball. That's how I ended up playing in a Division I college. And that's how I ended up transferring to FIU as a nobody. And they were ranked 11th in the nation when I transferred there. On top of that, I found out a year later, there were people more qualified than me that were knocking on FIU's door. And FIU said, "Nah, we're good." So God's hand has played a role in every single point of my career. And yeah, there are times where I'm going to feel anxious because it's a matter of, am I working hard enough? But in terms of the grand scheme of it all, at least I can say, at least I'm working hard and it's in his hands. So he really only has me in charge of the minor details, like showing up.
And I think sometimes it's difficult to see people who are trying to get into their faith, and then when things don't go their way, they give up. And I think what sometimes those people don't understand is that your walk with Jesus is not always going to be easy.
No,
It's not going to be
far from easy.
Yeah, it's far from easy. So what advice would you give to those people who are new into their faith, or get discouraged when things don't go their way?
I think it's important to remember that Jesus didn't come down here to make life easy. He came to save lives. And if you were the last person on earth or the only person on earth that needed to be saved, he still would have done it all over again. And that brings, that alone, thinking about it for too long, will bring tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
But furthermore is that he made every single person to do what they are gifted to do, what he had gifted them to do. And with that, you can take that confidence and you can sprint with it. Because I can say personally, at the end of the day, I think the most rewarding thing will be that I get to use what he gave me for his own glory. And, being in God's favor will get you farther than hustle ever will. Like, ever will. There's only so much you can control and what you control, and that comes to working hard, showing up, and living a life that glorifies him. Those things, you do all those things, you're going to be just fine. Okay. Everything that's not in your control, you can leave it to him. And I think he likes you to leave it to him because at the end of the day, he likes to show up in ways that, we can't deny that he's real. And if you choose to trust him, he's going to use you. The stronger you are in faith, the more he can use you, which means the more difficult it can get. But your reward in heaven is great, and I also think that your reward down here is going to be, greater than you can imagine, because he knows all the outcomes and we don't. We really don't.
And for anyone that's watching, if you want to hear more, just about faith and just faith filled discussions and hearing about, people's testimonies, Serah has a great podcast. She's a co-founder of it, For His Glory podcast. How did that come about?
So that actually came about through me and my best friend, who is actually in the other room right now. She's staying with me. She's from North Carolina. She plays pro soccer in Ireland. But we met about, I want to say, spring semester of, was it this past year? Maybe so. I know it was a very fast developing friendship, but we found each other in pretty similar circumstances, and we met through Fellowship of Christian Athletes at FIU. And as we got closer, we just ended up having a lot of nights where we just would get really deep into our faith conversation, and we found it, interesting. And one day we were just like, imagine if we just mic'd ourselves up, and it'd just be cool, because these are some good conversations. It's not just reading straight out of the Bible. It's talking about experience. It's imagining the kingdom, imagining the future and what God has in store for us. And I guess one day we just decided to pull the plug for fun. I know I bought some cheap mics. I had good lighting in my apartment, and we filmed one episode. And I actually do know how to edit. Back from high school, I was kind of a techie, and I put it together, and we watched it, and we were like, that was pretty exhilarating. That was pretty rewarding. So we put it on a YouTube channel. And from there, we were just like, you know what, let's just invest and grow in this thing. And if it blows up, if it doesn't, this is a very rewarding line of work. And it has been slowly growing. I like that the content and its following, it's, rich in people and personalities. I didn't want it to just blow up so that we were famous. I wanted to reach out to people, and it's already been amazing getting texts and DMs saying, hey, I really needed to hear this today, because it's just, when it's for God, it cannot fail, and because of that, now we're talking about things we want to do in the future with it. And it's cool too, because our careers as pro athletes, because that's what the podcast is for collegiate and professional athletes to use our platform to tell their stories and really just normalize talking about faith, because it shouldn't be uncomfortable. I think that's just a lie that the enemy feeds us. But we want to eventually, I know for me, my family worked with Compassion for many years, and we want to, once we have, funding for it, to foster a few kids through Compassion International that solely are in situations where they don't think they're ever going to get to play sports because of money. And I just want to foster a few kids and say, just be able to say, hey, don't let anything stop you. If this is your dream, we support you, and we've got your back on this. But it's a lot of little cool things like that honestly outweigh anything that I might accomplish in my career. To me, that sounds so much more rewarding, and just fun to do. And whatever God does in my sport, I'm going to be grateful for, because, heck, I got to play professional athletics, and not that many people get to say that.
Yeah. No, that's truly amazing. All the work that you're doing, and glorifying God in the process. I'm very proud of it. It's truly amazing. And If you guys ever come out with any merch, sign me up. I will definitely.
We actually do have a few things in the can right now. What I'm trying to do is find some young graphic designers in this area. Preferably, what I've been praying for is that maybe there's a Christian graphic designer down here that is looking for a breakthrough that we could work with. But for sure, we're the people that have come onto our podcast have gotten like hoodies and all that stuff. But right now, it's still I still want to say we're coming to the close of phase A, whatever phase A is. We didn't even really think we were at this point right now. So, but it's again, like it's the one thing that I do for work in air quotes, but it never feels like work ever.
Yeah, whenever, sign me up. I'll be ready. I'll be ready to get some merch.
100%, we got you.
So you being a coach, you mentioned it earlier in the episode. What advice, not only to your players, but players who want to reach the professional level like yourself, or even in college, what advice would you give them to help them reach that level?
I want to say for high school and college, any freshman that might be watching this, anything you think you know about how this system works, drop it. It's going to be a wild ride, but the more you just sit back and enjoy it, the easier it's going to be. I promise you that, because I think as a freshman, I've seen it at both levels. It's just very, very easy to add extra pressure just because you're young. That doesn't mean anything. You go out there, you do what you do, you treat people with kindness, and you glorify Christ. It's all going to work out. That's number one. Number two, for anyone pursuing a higher level, doubt is the number one killer of athletes. You know, that's also my coach, Coach Mike. And two, it's just, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. And with God, he always has the way. He will find a way. It will not fail. It might not go the way that you anticipated, but again, going back to what I said earlier, you control the things you can control, and that's showing up, working hard, and glorifying him. Everything else will fall into line. I promise you that. I promise you that.
So we're getting close to 2025. What are your personal goals, both in competition and personally, in the new year?
I haven't even thought of that yet. I've never been a big fan of like New Year, New Me.
Resolution, yeah.
Well, only because I feel like if you have something, you should start it right now before the urge runs away. But new year will be a new season, you know, points reset. And I want to do everything I say I'm going to do in terms of training, like, because that is within my control. But I want to say goal-wise, within the sport, I would like to experience an international or AVP main draw, which I don't think is really like crazy out of reach if I'm really putting in the work, but it's those little wins. But overall, what I want to get out of my season next year is that I want to be more process driven and enjoying those little moments that God implements in my life, because I feel like the hustle and bustle from this past season, it was like, oh my gosh, I did so well, and then I just like I didn't even, you know, I wasn't thankful or grateful or anything. I was just like, I got to keep going, I got to keep things rolling. And I think that I just, you know, kind of dug myself 6 feet deep with that mentality. I started going crazy really, really fast, and I just want to enjoy everything that God gives me out of this sport, you know, good and bad. And yeah, that's really it. I want to be able to finish off the season saying, you know what, like, this is what I think that I gave 100% or 110%. I think I got exactly what I wanted out of it, you know.
Final question of the episode: how do you envision the future? Because women's sports is growing so much, especially in this past year. How do you envision the future of beach volleyball and its visibility and just popularity?
I think it's blowing up by the day. I mean, when I committed my senior year of high school, I want to say there were about 56 beach volleyball teams at the Division 1 level for the NCAA. There's like 120 something now. So
Wow.
it is almost tripled within the past 4 years. Uh, the professional AVP events are going to start being streamed, from what I'm told, on CBS next year. That's a
Wow.
huge first, because it used to be, first it was Peacock, then it was like Amazon Prime Video, and then it was YouTube. So CBS is a huge one. And I think it's such a good sport, and it might not be the most funded, but I had this conversation with one of my coaches before, and he was saying, people don't realize how much the world loves volleyball. And from the grand scheme of things, like, it's true. Anytime I tell anyone that this is what I do for a living, they say, I loved it. I played it in high school. I played intramural in college. I go out with my friends. My family does it. Like, it is a household sport, because it's fun. It is a very fun sport. You can just pick up a ball and you can do it. And I think that people, because of that, really do appreciate the high level of it. And once it starts, presenting itself as it will make money, I don't think it's going to have any issue, and the next Olympics is going to be in the US, and I think it's going to be a huge thing in California, which is, beach volleyball home. Like, that's like the mecca for the sport. I think within the next decade, it's just going to blow up. And it's exciting knowing that I'm going to get to be a part of that.
Well, everyone, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Serah, thank you so much again for just taking your time out of your busy day and your schedule and just coming on here and just having this conversation with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy a good conversation.
Well, this has been Barbershop Talk presented by PlugTalkSports and Grumman Barbershop. We'll see you guys next time for a brand new episode.